we go. All right, welcome. This is Unit 1 of the We the People National Invitational. My name is Christine Hull, and we are here with Woodside Middle School from Indiana. And in a moment, I will have the judges introduce themselves, followed by the students, and then we will begin the hearing. Students will deliver a 4-minute prepared statement, followed by 8 minutes of judge questions. My microphone will be muted during the hearing, and I will be holding up the 1 minute and time signs. I suggest that you use gallery view rather than speaker view. Our students are all spotlighted, so they will be on the top. At the conclusion of the hearing, judges will give brief feedback to the team, and then we will conclude. Judges, the floor is yours. And Grant, make sure you change your name.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Alan Brodman, and myself and the other judges will introduce themselves. We'll ask that you then, as students, introduce yourselves and your teacher, and then we'll get to the part you're really interested in, which is what is the question. So, as I said, my name is Alan Brodman. I'm a recently retired high school teacher. I taught in East Brunswick, New Jersey, where I brought teams to the national competition, and some of my students were bright enough to win national championships. So I'm looking forward to hearing from all three of you.
My name is Cliptis Ann Grider-Jones. I work at the University of Louisville's McConnell Center and look forward to hearing your presentation today.
I'm Tim Moore from the Center for the Study of the American Constitution at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and my high school years were spent in Columbia City, Indiana.
Introduce yourselves, please.
Hi, my name's Grant Lyons.
My name is Hudson Mulhall.
My name is Leo Markwell, and we'd also like to introduce our teacher, Mr. Haff.
Morning or afternoon, sorry, it's been a long day. All right, so you will be doing question number 1. I will read you the question and then you may begin. What is a constitution and a constitutional government? What is Republican government? How can constitutional governments be organized to prevent the abuse of power and protect natural rights? How can higher or fundamental law be distinguished from statutory or ordinary law that governments regularly create and enforce? You may begin.
Good afternoon. A constitution is a guiding principle. Technically speaking, everything and everyone has a constitution that they follow, as everyone and everything has a guiding principle. A constitutional government is a government that has higher laws that limit itself, a limited government. The Republican government is an idea that originated from Rome. The idea is the people have the power, but it's not like in a direct democracy. In a direct democracy, the idea is the people vote on every issue. This takes a lot of time, and oftentimes the people don't have time to work and take care of their families. In a republic, the people vote for representatives in which do these everyday votes. In Rome, there are basically 2 groups of the government, the Senate and the leader. Essentially, the Senate is the group of people who would advise the leader, and the leader makes the decisions. The consuls and later censors would appoint the people in the Senate. You can see this happening today in modern republics like America, for example. You vote for Congress, who makes and passes bills, then the president will approve of the bill or veto it. The president also appoints justices in the Supreme Court, which can decide if a law is constitutional or not. John Adams once said, "A republic is a government of laws, not of men."
The constitutional government must base its laws on its own higher law to ensure the government's powers are separated and balanced. The founders got this idea from a French social theory professor of their time, Baron de Montesquieu. Montesquieu believed heavily in a limited government. All laws must be based in a higher law in order to protect natural rights and abuse of power. The founders were creating the US Constitution we have today. They made sure that each branch of government not only had different powers, but also checks on each other to stop them from abusing this power. If we look at the recent impeachment trial that had to go through both the House and the Senate, for example. Article 1 of the Constitution gives out these powers in a sense. For example, Section 8 gives the legislative branch its power to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or any department or office or thereof. Higher law is invested by the Constitution and protected by the separation.
A constitutional government is formed with the task of establishing a nation that protects the people's natural rights, while also limiting some rights in order to protect the common good. There must be law. Two types of law, which are very different, are higher law and ordinary law. Higher law is a set of laws that establish and limit the powers of government. One example of this is Article 1, Section 8, the enumerated powers of Congress. The higher law here establishes the powers bestowed upon Congress, and whatever powers that are not given are limiting them. Ordinary laws are the day-to-day application of defending rights and the punishment for people who violate them. These ordinary laws have to follow the guidelines set by a higher law. For example, the Bill of Rights is the higher law that defines the rights of the people and the extent of the government's power over them. But it is the ordinary laws under these amendments that enforce the defense of the rights. Consider the Second Amendment. This defends the rights of the people to protect themselves, keep and bear arms, from both crime and abuse of power. But people who have been convicted of a felony or have a severe mental illness can be prohibited from ownership. That is ordinary law, since it follows the guidelines set by a higher law, but also limits the right in order to protect the people. A constitutional government is one where the leaders have limits on their power in order to protect the rights of the citizens. A constitutional government is only functional when systems such as higher law and ordinary law are in play, ensuring that the branches of government remain in their lots and that there's a dam between their power and the rights of the people.
Okay. So I want to, you've talked a bit here about limited government. I want to play off of that a bit. So your argument is that we have a limited government. I'd like you to evaluate how good a job we have done historically from framing to today on assuring that limited government. If you like, you can even give a grade to our system, like your teacher would give you a grade on your assignment at home or the assignment that you've done. So,
well,
go ahead.
When I look at this, I think that back when our government was first formed, a lot of people were stepping out, especially during the Articles of Confederation. A lot of people were standing out and fighting against these certain laws that they didn't like and they thought were oppressive and they thought were unfair and weren't protecting them. And there was a lot more of attacking certain laws and attacking certain systems and having those changed. I feel like back then in the 1800s, we did a very good job of stepping up and fighting against parts of the government that we didn't like. But I feel like as time's gone on, we've become less educated on our government. And instead of fighting against laws, and today, with the BLM movement, we're fighting against ideals instead, which is not something our government can change just in one day, unlike some laws or some systems. So if I were to grade our government in this area right now, probably a D.
I would give us a D as well, but I would give us a D for separate reasons. I would say that back when this country first started, people weren't very educated on our government, as most people were farmers and they didn't really have any education. I mean, they didn't even have a library they could go to find out about things that were going on. And even before the internet, it was still hard to find many people on the street, or especially in rural communities, who knew a lot about the president or their senator or their state senator. So I would say that we have I would give us a 65, and I would give us that because I think we've gotten better, but I still think we're putting a lot of pressure on the people in certain areas. And I think we haven't done great in terms of a limited government. And I think that the BLM movement, as part of it is fighting against ideals, part of it is fighting in the practice of making the police less oppressive. And even if you do not agree with the ideals it is pushing and fighting against, I believe anything that can make our police force less oppressive than it currently is, which in my opinion is would be very good for our country.
Let me ask you this about unwritten constitutions. Do you think unwritten constitutions can function effectively as higher law?
Well, let's look at Britain, for example. They do not have a written constitution. They have many years of precedents and court cases and other things of the like. And when we look at Britain, Britain was able to form an empire. And Britain formed a very oppressive empire, which does prove that they do have a monarchy, and well, they had a monarchy only 100 years ago, even if it was still becoming more of a constitutional monarchy. But I would argue that with their precedents and laws, it doesn't work as well as a written constitution, even though I would say it does still work, because they have had many powerful prime ministers who have worked around their constitutional guidings in a sense, like Margaret Thatcher, for example. But I would say that they still have this very sense of monarchist pride. They still have a lot of pride in their monarchy. And I would say that part of that would go away if they had a written constitution, and part of that nationalism would go away if they had a written constitution.
Well, I would like to disagree. I feel like that their limited government isn't really that limited, and I don't even know if it can be considered limited at all. With the fact that they don't really have a written constitution and simply have different ideas and different scenarios that they can base their decisions off of, it sort of weakens the entire claim that, hey, we're just like using our constitution to make decisions. Because if you don't really have one and you just have a set of ideas or things that have happened in the past, you can sort of just change it and really do whatever you want.
I would agree that it is a slippery slope.
Thank you.
Thank you. Some people say that the United States is both a republic and a democracy. Do you agree with that statement? Do you think that's an accurate statement? Again, that the US is a republic and a democracy? And could you explain how it could be both?
Well, I feel like a republic, as we've seen in Rome, is a little bit different from the republic we have today. Because in Rome, it wasn't really the people making decisions, such as a democracy. Whereas a democracy doesn't always have to be the people deciding everything, therefore a representative democracy. So America is more of a representative democracy, I would argue, than a republic or a democracy, simply because we have representatives such as a republic, and also the people decide who are these representatives, such as a democracy.
I would like to say that we all like both, in a sense that we have both extremes because of our we are a federation, and we have things like we have our states and we have our city government and we have our national government. And I would say that part of the thing that makes us like a democracy and a republic is that we have this very connected country. And in this very connected country, like the people's ideals and what the people say sways our senators and representatives in ways that they wouldn't sway if they weren't so avid to listening to our vote. So because we are basically voting them into their job, into their day job, they are more likely to vote for what we would vote for if we had a direct democracy. And that is why I do believe that we are both a democracy and a republic.
Thank you.
Let's think about long constitutions and short constitutions. I asked you about written and unwritten. Do you think longer constitutions are better then shorter constitution when it comes to higher law?
Yay.
Leo. Mr. Half, do you have a Dickens of a time with Leo?
I tell you, man, all year.
Yeah,
I'm the hype man.
I kind of like him, but I don't have to teach him, right? Yeah.
All right. Well, this is our time to give you some feedback. So, Tim, you want to start?
Oh, yes, yes. Well, I'll start out. I appreciate the fact that a lot of your answers are rooted in ancient history, and I really appreciate that you're digging deep into the historical well for your answers. I also appreciated your suspicions about the British Empire. Would the British Empire has been oppressive if they had a written constitution? Now, I think Hudson, you and I might. That's an interesting conversation, and that's an interesting idea. I don't know I agree with you, but that's also beside the point whether I agree with you or not. The fact that you're thinking about constitutions and the practical implications of how they operate in the world, I think that's an interesting insight. So I got something to think about tonight. Thank you very much. So I appreciated that. So I think you've demonstrated you're wrestling with these ideas, and that's really a great thing. And I appreciate the time that we've had together.
Thank you all. I also really enjoyed the presentation and our time here this afternoon. I in particular like the nuance that the recognition of the nuance that the Roman Republic and the history that you all were studying there, it's not the same republic, if you want to call the US a republic. It's not the same. And I really appreciate your insights there. And then also there at the end, thinking about, okay, but why are we a democracy? And then you all, a couple of you hitting on the point there. I think the representative democracy is a better term to use. So I appreciate the insight you have there. Again, the attention to the nuance of the ideas and bringing in that historical into the contemporary. So really appreciate, again, as Tim said, wrestling with those ideas. These are hard ideas. And the examples that you continue to use both in your responses and your opening statement, just continue to do that as much as possible. Use amendments, drop a Federalist paper number reference in there. Just continue to pepper us moving forward with more of those examples. And we really enjoyed our time here with you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with everything that's been said. I thoroughly enjoyed our discussion, and that's what it was. It was a conversation, and that's the way this is supposed to be. Once we get to the follow-ups, it's supposed to be basically a conversation. And you brought us some, and again, I completely agree with the concept of how nuanced your responses were. You saw to these issues, you saw there were two sides, okay? And we're able to identify those and explain them. So, and provide examples, which has always been my bugaboo, and you did, I think, a fairly nice job with that as well. So I think a nice job, guys, very nice. Thank you.